All right, let's dive into something pretty interesting today. We're looking at Goat Tapper, this project that wants to, well, basically wants you to tap your way to owning real estate. I mean, we're talking like fractional ownership of actual buildings, all through a mobile game. It's wild. Our source here is this article, Goat Tapper, Bridging Gaming and Real-World Investments with GTPR Tokens. I'm sure some of you are thinking, okay, another play-to-earn thing. But Goat Tapper is doing some pretty unique stuff, especially with their GTPR token. So what's the deal with this one?
Well, it's not just about earning and spending, they've really focused on utility and scarcity with this token. It's kind of like they took the hype you usually see with meme coins and gave it an actual use case within the game.
So it's not just about pumping the price.
Exactly, yeah. The token is like completely woven into how the game works. Players use GTPR for things like in-game boosters to get ahead. They need it to participate in the auctions for fractional real estate ownership, and even to pay those transaction fees when they win and actually get their piece of the property.
So basically, the more people playing and using the platform, the higher the demand for the token. Clever.
Hmm.
But I'm still curious, how does all this translate to, actually owning a piece of real estate?
Okay, so picture this. You're hooked on Goat Tapper, playing like crazy, racking up tons of points. Now, these points actually become your currency in these special Goat Tapper auctions. They call them Goat Drop auctions. And that's where things get really interesting.
Hold on, so you're not cashing out these points, you use them to bid.
Exactly. And you're bidding on these things called fractional ownership NFTs. Each NFT represents a piece of an actual real-world property.
That's a pretty big leap. I mean, most games you're earning points for bragging rights or virtual items. Here we're talking about owning a piece of a building.
Yeah, it's a big leap, and I think that's what makes Goat Tapper so intriguing. They're kind of merging the gaming world with real-world assets in a way we haven't really seen before.
All right, so break it down for me. How do these goat drop options work? Let's say I've been playing, I've got a mountain of points. What's next?
First off, you need to hold a certain amount of GTPR just to participate. It's their way of making sure only serious bidders are in the auction. Then you can start browsing the available properties. And GoTapper is pretty careful about what they choose. They want to make sure these properties actually have investment potential, good locations, steady rental income, that kind of stuff.
So they're not just throwing any old property up for auction, they're thinking like actual real estate investors.
Yeah, exactly. They're picking assets that would make sense for both traditional real estate investors and for people who are, brand new to this kind of thing.
Okay, so I'm browsing, I find a property I like. What then? Is it like eBay at that point?
Pretty much, yeah. You use your earned points to bid, highest bidder wins, and the winner pays a processing fee using GTPR again to claim their NFT, which is like their proof of ownership for that little piece of the property.
So it's kind of like owning stock, but for a building.
That's a good way to put it. But instead of a company, you own a piece of an actual physical asset.
Yeah, I see what you mean. That could be a really cool way for people who never even considered real estate to get involved. Not everyone can just like drop millions on a condo in Dubai or something. But what if you could own like a tiny piece of one?
Exactly. That's one of the big innovations here, fractional ownership. It makes investing in these assets way more accessible.
But what happens after you win? You've got your NFT, your little piece of the pie. What can you actually do with it?
Well, that's where the benefits of this whole tokenized real estate thing come in. First off, liquidity. Unlike traditional real estate, which can take forever to sell, these NFTs can be traded instantly on different platforms.
So if you need to cash out, it's much easier.
Right. Plus, because it's all tracked on the blockchain, everything is super transparent and secure. You can see the entire history of ownership, any transactions, and it can't be tampered with.
That makes sense. But what about the value of the NFT itself? I mean, real estate can be up and down. I'm guessing these NFT values would fluctuate along with the property, right?
Oh, absolutely. The NFT's value is directly tied to the underlying asset. That's why Goat Tapper is so focused on choosing properties with strong investment potential. They want to make sure those NFTs hold their value and even appreciate over time.
So it's not just about selling you a digital token. They're selling you a piece of a whole investment strategy.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it. They're bridging that gap between the accessibility of gaming and the potential returns of real estate.
Pretty impressive. But, it can't all be about the money, can it? how does GoTapper actually build trust and get people excited about this whole concept?
Well, that's where the community aspect comes in. GoTapper has a multi-pronged approach to this. They have referral programs where players can earn rewards for inviting friends, and they've really gone all in on social media using memes and viral challenges and stuff to keep people engaged and spread the word.
It sounds like they're creating a movement, not just a platform.
Exactly, and they're always adding new features, events, limited time offers, just to keep the community active and, invested in what they're doing.
So it's like they're gamifying the entire experience, not just the game itself, but the whole community aspect.
Yeah, it's gamification on top of gamification, and it seems to be working for them.
Well, it definitely sounds like they've tapped into something unique here. We've covered a lot, but I'm still wondering, what does this mean for the future of real estate?
That is a great question, and it's one we'll definitely be exploring further as we dive deeper into the implications of GoTapper's model. It really could be, a glimpse into what real estate looks like in the future, where everything is about accessibility and how quickly you can buy and sell. Imagine, like, buying and selling property as easy as trading stocks. That's the kind of potential we're talking about here.
That's a pretty compelling vision. But real estate, it's always been kind of slow moving. Do you think the old guard, the big players are going to embrace this kind of disruption?
Well, there's always going to be resistance to change, right? Especially in an industry like real estate. But honestly, I think the advantages of tokenization are just too big to ignore. Increased liquidity, everything is more transparent, lower transaction costs. Those are things that everyone wants, not just the tech-savvy folks who are already into this stuff.
Yeah, it could be a win-win for both sides, buyers and sellers.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the elephant in the room here. Regulation. The crypto world is still kind of like the Wild West, right? When it comes to rules and oversight, where does GoTapper fit into all that?
That's a really important question. Regulatory uncertainty is definitely one of the biggest hurdles for projects like this. They're operating in a space that's constantly changing. And governments, well, they're still trying to figure out how to approach crypto and all these tokenized assets.
So it's kind of like GoTapper's walking a tightrope. They got to innovate and push the boundaries, but also make sure they're not stepping on any toes legally.
Exactly. And it's not just national regulations either. They have to think about international laws too, especially with real estate, since it's so tied to specific locations and jurisdictions.
Sounds incredibly complicated. What are they doing to deal with all these regulatory challenges?
From what I've seen, they're working directly with legal experts to make sure they're compliant in every market they enter. Yeah. And they're also actively talking to regulators, trying to educate them about their model and advocating for clearer guidelines, which is important.
That's good to hear that they're being proactive.
Yeah.
But let's step back from regulation for a second and talk about the bigger picture. We've touched on accessibility, but are there other potential benefits for society as a whole?
Oh, for sure. One of the most exciting things is the potential for greater financial inclusion. Traditionally, investing in real estate has always been a rich person's game, right? You needed a ton of capital, which excluded a huge chunk of the population. GoTapper's fractional ownership model could completely change that. It opens up opportunities for people who might never have had a chance before.
It's like democratizing wealth creation.
Exactly. It gives people a real chance to participate in an asset class that's always been out of reach. And it goes beyond just individuals. Imagine what communities could do. A group of people could use a platform like GoTapper to invest in properties that directly benefit their neighborhood.
That's a really powerful idea. It could give communities the power to shape their own futures.
Yeah, it really could. And it's all possible because of how they're using technology.
Speaking of innovation, are there other ways this tokenized real estate model could be used? Could we see it applied to other types of assets?
That's a really interesting question. The core idea here, fractional ownership and tokenization, it's not just for real estate. Any asset that can be, digitized and put on a blockchain could work this way.
So we could see platforms like GoTapper popping up for everything. Art, collectibles, even owning a piece of a business.
Exactly. Imagine tapping your way to owning a piece of a Banksy painting, or a vintage comic book, or even shares in a promising startup, all through a gamified platform.
That's crazy. Yeah. It feels like we're on the edge of a whole new way of investing.
We are. And it's not just about making investing more accessible, it's about making it more engaging, making it fun even.
Which brings us right back to GoTapper and how they're using gamification. It's not just a marketing trick, it's a core part of their strategy.
Exactly. They've figured out that if you can make investing enjoyable, you can attract a much wider audience. especially people who might be intimidated by the traditional ways of doing things.
It's like they've turned investing into a game, but with real-world rewards. Let's circle back to the article for a minute. What were some of the big takeaways that stood out to you?
One thing that really impressed me was how much they emphasized community building. They get it, They know that having a strong, engaged community is everything. They're not just building a platform, they're building a whole movement.
It seems like they're trying to create a sense of belonging, like a shared purpose among their users.
Yeah, exactly. And they're doing it through all these different things. Innovative game mechanics, social media engagement, real-world events.
It's almost like they're creating a club, a network of people who are excited about this new way of doing things.
Exactly. And that sense of community, that's what's going to drive their growth. And that's what sets them apart from all the copycats out there.
Their community focus is definitely admirable. But what about risks? Are there challenges they might face as they grow bigger?
Of course, there are always challenges. One thing is, how do they keep that sense of community as they get bigger? It's easy to maintain those close relationships when it's small and everyone knows each other. But as the community grows, it's harder to make sure everyone feels connected and valued.
It's the classic startup problem, right? How to grow without losing what made you special in the first place.
Exactly. They're going to have to be really intentional about how they build their community as they expand. Another challenge, and we touched on this earlier, is security. When you're dealing with people's money, security is absolutely paramount.
Especially in the crypto world, where there's always, the risk of hacks and scams.
Yeah, exactly. They need to have really solid systems in place to protect user data and assets, and they need to be constantly on guard, staying ahead of any potential threats.
It's a huge responsibility.
Yeah.
But it seems like they're aware of these challenges, and they're taking steps to address them, which is good.
They are, and it's those steps, that proactive approach, that's what's going to determine if they succeed in the long run.
This has been a really insightful conversation. We've covered so much, from how GoTepper actually works to the bigger implications of tokenized real estate and the importance of community. It's been great.
It really has. It's been fascinating. And I think it's safe to say that GoTapper is a project worth watching. They're pushing boundaries, challenging how things are usually done. It's exciting and inspiring, all at the same time.
Yeah, it definitely feels like GoTapper is more than just a game. It's almost like a sneak peek into a future where investing is more accessible, more engaging, and maybe even, fun. But this article we've been talking about is really focused on real estate.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think this whole model is limited to just property?
Yeah.
Or could we see it applied to other stuff too?
I think that's the really exciting part, the tech itself, this ability to break down ownership into smaller pieces and track it all on a blockchain. That's not just limited to buildings or land.
Theoretically, you could tokenize anything.
Yeah, pretty much anything that can be digitized and has some kind of value assigned to it.
Wow, so we could see platforms like GoTapper popping up for all sorts of things, like art, collectibles, even owning a piece of a business.
Exactly. Imagine playing a game and earning your way to owning a piece of a rare painting or a classic car or even the rights to a song.
That's wild. It's like taking things that were only available to the super rich and making them available to, everyone.
Yeah, exactly. It's like democratizing ownership.
And it's not just about individuals either. What if, whole communities could use this to invest in stuff that benefits them directly, like a group of neighbors buying a share of a local business together, or even a plot of land to create a park or something?
Exactly. It takes crowdfunding to a whole other level. It's not just donating to a cause anymore. You're actually becoming an owner.
And all of this is possible because of, blockchain.
Yeah, the transparency and security of blockchain is really what makes all this work.
This is like a vision of the future where everyone has a chance to own something and communities have more power to shape their own destinies.
It is a pretty powerful vision.
But let's be real. Are there any potential downsides to this? Any challenges that we need to think about?
No, of course. Whenever you have a disruptive innovation, there are always going to be challenges, right? One concern is market manipulation. If all these tokenized assets become widely traded, there's always the risk of people trying to game the system, manipulating prices to make a quick buck.
So we need some pretty strong regulations to prevent that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. Regulation is key in any financial market to keep things fair and stable. Another big challenge is education. For this whole thing to work, people need to really understand how it all works, the risks involved, how to protect themselves.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in the hype, of new technology.
Hmm.
But it's super important to, do your research and understand what you're getting into before you invest in anything.
Couldn't agree more. And that's where platforms like GoTapper have a responsibility too, right? It's not just about getting people excited, it's about